We're going to have some really great conversations today about how to design for real life. So I hope you enjoy it, and I have lots of things to take away. You talked about the executive functions,
Yes.
and I don't know that everybody's familiar with that. So we talked about that for just a hot minute because
Okay.
that resonates with me.
It's a big part of my private practice. It's a big part of what we do. We work with one-on-one with clients. We provide workshops and trainings, both not so much to corporate, although we do, but higher ed institutions and public institutions. But executive functions are like they are the set of things that allow you to do anything in life. So this is things like time management, working memory, self-advocacy, self-agency, um, you know, planning, organizing, problem solving. These are all executive functions. And so they're housed in your prefrontal cortex, which is not in a normally developing human is not fully developed until they're in their mid-20s,
Mm.
which is why every single college student on the planet struggles with all of these things because
Yes.
whether they have a diagnosis or not, none of them can do any of these things, right? They all struggle with organizing, planning, problem solving, self advocacy. For individuals who are neurodivergent, either acquired or genetic, if they are cognitively different, these executive functions can continue to present problems as they matriculate into life. So in the workplace, this could be, someone who's really struggling with a deadline. They don't have time management is probably, especially for ADHD folks, time management as an executive function is probably one of the most prevalent challenges for people who have ADHD. Time is what I always call time is slippery.
Hmm.
So, time management requires a couple of executive functions. It requires foresight and hindsight. And if you have no idea contextually, like, did I do that last week or did I do that yesterday? Wait, is this due tomorrow or is that due a week from now? So time requires those things. And for time management to actually be effective, this is important, especially if you've got team members on your team that can't seem to meet a deadline. If you have someone who is neurodivergent, time management as an executive function, there is either now or not now. There's no other time. So you either need me to give you this report now, or if you're telling me it's due on Friday, I've already forgotten because Friday is not now.
I know.
And
Yeah.
so if you're not building in executive function supports and scaffolding, even with adults, if you're not building those executive function scaffolding into your policies and programs and the way that you operate, you're going to continue to see some of these, what we would call performance issues
Gotcha.
with employees.
What's one example of a scaffolding for something like that?
So,
Or the deadlines, like that's
yeah,
just one example of
so
what
for
that looks
time
like.
management, we'll use like a corporate setting for that matter. So for teams, and I've done this for teams for a long time, you've got your typical Gantt chart, which is fine, but it's a little bit more work from a manager's perspective, but setting up, here's what the deliverables are for today. Here's what the deliverables are for tomorrow. But tomorrow you have to show up that morning and say, here's a reminder of what's due today. So there's lots of reminders, there's lots of cues, there's this constant manipulation of time and
Mhm.
delivery. And so it does require either the manager to continue to be that prompt or finding external prompts. There's like 1,000 of them out there. You could use your iPhone is a simple one and just
Like an
constantly
app,
putting,
like Emotion or
yeah,
Notion or something that does
all of
that.
those. There's 1,000. And
Yeah.
some people are more sort of analog and they prefer to write stuff down. A lot of the older clients tend to like write stuff down, whereas the younger generation tends to use those sort of app features that say, all right, here are all the tasks. So when you're getting a big project, here are all the tasks, here are their deadlines.
Yeah.
And then you sitting down and you're actually plugging them into the app so that that app is providing you that constant reminder. Because the other part with time management is it requires working memory. And working memory, if you are cognitively overloaded, is a problem.
Yeah.
So if somebody is already like here and they have to have a working memory, think of like working memory like sticky notes on a fridge.
Gotcha.
it's not going to stick, right? They're just going to keep falling off if they're not placed or like stuck just so.
Right.
So if you got somebody who's cognitively overloaded because the sensory environment has sent them into a tailspin, so their brain can't handle anymore, that means their working memory, there are no more sticky notes. And any ones that were there, they've fallen off. And now they don't know where they are on the floor.
Yeah.
And so, it's recognizing that working memory tied to time management, they're all of the executive functions really talk to each other. But it's really that working memory and time management combo that I tend to see most in the corporate environment.
Right.
People are missing their deadlines, or they said they would get something done. The other thing is part of time management is time estimation,
Mm.
which is also an executive function,
Yes.
which I'm guilty as charged. Like, yeah, I can do that. Sure, that's not no problem. That'll take me like 5 minutes. No, that's a 5 hour project. But or yeah,
We
that'll
call
take me
that
5 hours.
overestimating our abilities
And
and not
underestimating, yes,
understanding the time.
yeah, absolutely. So yeah, I don't know.
No, that does, and I think it just proves the point that there's so many different things that we have to look at, and it's really, you know, giving that space, for your employees to be able to talk about it and get help with it. And, where does that fall? Does that typically fall to HR? I mean, is HR the ones that are now going to have to kind of start stepping up a little bit more into being those advocates, being, having that foundational kind of education so they can start addressing these
Well,
things.
I think if we're talking about like policies and programs, those tend to sit
Yeah.
with kind of the HR
Yeah.
folks. The challenge is inherently, certainly in the workplace, is that facilities, construction, operations doesn't always roll up to HR.
Yes.
It still rolls up to, someone with a, chief real estate officer or finance. And I mean, nothing against either one of those. I mean, I've got lots of people I love in my life with those titles, but they're not the most empathetic people on the planet. So getting them to understand that, yeah, we know you have a budget. We know you need to fit so many XYZs in this space,
Yeah.
but there's a human element here. And so that I think is going to continue to be just organizationally from a structure perspective.
We are
That's going to be an
such
issue.
big advocates of getting, real estate, IT, HR.
Everyone needs to
Those
be in the room.
three need to be absolutely in the room every time.
Because not only that, think
From
about
the beginning.
technology.
Yes.
If you want to have a truly inclusive environment, your tech has to be able to support, people who are moving around. When you walk into the building, do you have a board that tells you exactly where you're going and where you are and what you need? So that tech policy program in place.
Yeah.
And IT is kind of the through line for all of them. So getting them all to the table is important.
It is, and I think it's getting better.
It is
I
getting
think we
better.
still have a long way to go, but I think it has gotten a lot better.
Yeah.
I also think now the decision-making team in general has gotten a lot bigger
Mhm.
overall, so that is more challenging too, but it tells me that they're at least getting more of those folks at the table, and I think that's
I
super
actually like it.
important.
I actually like that. I mean, I from a decision making perspective, I mean, I have a different spot that I'm sitting in now versus you. So like, I'm not really selling. I don't really execute, right? I'm more of on the educational sort
Yeah.
of advocacy platform, just getting everyone to understand what they're dealing with, what they should be thinking about. And then they essentially take that knowledge to someone like yourself or a team to actually execute against. And I can kind of help in that role too. But my fundamental sort of sell is the education
Yeah.
piece of it. And so I actually prefer when there's 100 people in the room, because the more people that hear this, the greater chance the organization has of actually being able to execute against some of the education that they're learning. So for me, I'm like, I think everyone, like, fine, let's have 50 decision makers,
Yes.
because that means you all have to be in the room.
I love decision makers when they're all together at the same
Yeah.
table because then we don't have to go,
Yes.
see those three over here and those two over there, and they can all hear what each other is saying. I
Mhm.
think that is so critical. And if we can just do more of that, to think about how much
Mhm.
better things would be just from that small change.
Yeah.
I wanna revisit Nirvana for just a hot minute because we're going to close out here, but also being here at AIS, we're here to do factory tour. And so we're looking at manufacturing and, I'm going to I'm going to have another follow-up conversation with the team at AIS as well. But we're here also to check out their Radiance program and all of the wonderful things that they're doing, and the
Yeah.
100 and some employees that they have here. They're all neurodivergent, and it's something that I haven't seen, from a company, and particularly not a furniture company. So I'm excited about that.
Yeah.
And just from your perspective, like what what interests you most? What are kind of the questions that come to your mind when you're talking to a company who's obviously engaging in this and just taking it as their own to make
Yeah.
sure that that everyone, has a place that they can feel valued and
Mhm.
belong,
Mhm.
and actually work in an environment where they feel safe and supported.
Yeah. I mean, I will say this much. When the AIS team sent me the information about the Radiance program, I was looking at it and watching the video, and I ended up I was crying. I had tissues because I you just don't see it. And when we talk about sort of that nirvana, that's what matters to me. I mean, being able the neurodivergent individuals, especially those who might be on a higher support needs spectrum,
Yeah.
oftentimes they are placed away out of public view, very much like my own mother was. Hide them away,
Yeah.
right? And so when you see an organization that says, no, not only are we not going to hide them, we're going to welcome them in. And oh, by the way, we are going to customize our process and our procedures in a way that will allow that particular individual to show up in the most authentic way is just, I'm trying not to cry. It just fills my soul because there's so few out there.
Yeah.
And I look at this kind of program that they're doing here, and it should be on every single news channel. It should be skylighted from balloons in the sky, because often what I hear is customizing roles, providing customizing scaffolding, modifying processes and procedures. It's too hard, it's too expensive, it changes too much, right? And that's not true.
No, it's not.
It's not true. And there's clear evidence. You have individuals here who feel like they belong. They know that they can do the work. All they want to do is show up and have someone work with them and say, I see you.
Yeah.
And you don't have to wear a mask. And oh, by the way, that quirky thing you have, we love it. And here's how we're going to cater to you. Older, higher support need individuals who are neurodivergent. Systemically, as a society, programs that support them fall off once they age out of the system. So, you think mid-20s after 18. There's
Right.
not a lot of supports for them.
Right.
And so you might see them in lower wage jobs. You may see them, in sort of the service sector, fast foods, things like that. And so to see them thrive at a program like this, I don't know, I just think it's magic. And I think this is the exact thing that I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When you take that foundational literacy and you actually build a program around it, and you see it thrive firsthand.
I too think it's amazing. And, I don't think it gets, in general, anyone that has a program like that is not getting enough credit, and they're to learn from. I mean, they've clearly gone through it. We're going to talk to, the gentleman who heads that up, and, we're going to get some more information on that. But I think, what we have to remember is that they're bringing skills that are different.
Yeah.
And different can be so good too, when you were talking about the
Nirvana. And, you had mentioned something about, when we build this team, what if people were allowed to come in and say, I am ADHD, but what I'm really awesome at is this one skill
Yeah.
that probably everybody else on this team struggles with, hates doing, isn't as good at. There's so many of these, cognitive, abilities, that counter a lot of the challenges that actually can be, such a great addition to the team. And I think if we were a little bit more open minded about that and thought about it, a little bit differently, and maybe sourcing, I'll just be sourcing people.
Yeah.
Hey, I need some neurodivergent people in my team because we need to think about these things and think about if we were hiring for positions like we did, a sports team. Well, I
That's
need
right.
somebody who can dive into, this number crunching for 8 hours a day and loves it, is really good at it. I can, but I'm not going to go sit, in the middle of,
The
an
whole package.
open,
Yep.
office. And, so there's going to be some trade-offs, but I think that that goes for everyone, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if we do find space, like you said, to build some of these policies and the scaffolding, how much more valuable is it rather than being seen, as a drain
Yeah.
or, a
Hands
resource
down. I mean, like time management's a problem for me. So like if you want me to do something that's not at the 11th and a half hour, like I'm probably not your gal for that part of the team or that part of the project. But if you need someone who can sit back and start to see the landscape, make interconnections, see patterns before other people can see them, almost in my brain, I have like an ongoing whiteboard that I have with 97 tabs open at one time. So that allows me, the way that my brain is wired, allows me to see patterns and problems, oftentimes way before anybody can even recognize that they're about to drive right into a wall.
what a huge
Um,
asset that is.
so if
For
you're
you.
looking for that skill set and hey, we're working on this project, it's highly complicated, there's lots of moving pieces. I don't need a technical executor. I need someone who can sit back and actually see those patterns
Yeah.
play out. If you knew that that's what you needed, now you can source for that.
Those are all the things we wanted to touch on.
Yeah.
So I so appreciate this conversation that we
This
had.
was fun.
And I know we could keep talking about it more and more. I will make sure that, that our listeners have access to the resources that you have. I'm sure we will have another conversation very soon
Sure.
about all of this. And
Anytime.
I really appreciate your time
Thank you.
and your candor. I mean, this is a big topic, and I think even just our chat today may feel a little overwhelming for some people, but it's the beginning,
Yeah.
right? And it's gonna start the conversation, and that's really all that we're asking is have some awareness.
Yeah.
Know that people are not out there. Most people are not out there just going, "Oh, I can't meet the deadline," whatever.
Yeah.
And I know that can be a big, thing that kind of gets in the way too. I have this or I have that or I have to deal with this. These are legitimate issues. Like these are legitimate challenges, and we can't just sit here and say, "Oh, you'll get over that," or you just have to find a way to deal with it.
Yeah.
If we can just have a little bit of empathy to understand there might just be a slightly different way to treat the space, the policy,
Yeah.
the communication, or just how you're working with someone else can go a long way.
Yeah.
It doesn't even need to necessarily be a huge program that's dedicated. It's about this awareness, this literacy, and just realizing that we all bring something very important to the table. And if we're willing to get around some of the other challenges, for neurotypical people, I think we can get around some challenges for everyone else too.
Because it doesn't require, there are no new tools.
Right.
We have all the tools. We just have to figure out, do we need a screwdriver? Like a screwdriver and a butter knife are probably going to do the same thing, depending on what you need it to.
Sure.
But one's probably better than the other. So we don't really need a new tool. We don't need, sometimes I'll work with designers that will say, oh, what is the latest and greatest? Like, tell me how to create a sensory inclusive environment. You don't need a tool. You have the information.
Yeah.
What you're missing is the interconnection between the human side of it and the tool you already have in your toolbox.
Yeah. I love it. And that's a wrap on this episode with Kelly Colón. I hope you enjoyed this episode, and I hope you got a lot of information out of it. This really is a call to action for executives, leadership, and businesses in general to really think a little harder about how their employees and how, frankly, their leadership team is showing up for work. And we just ask that you're a little bit more empathetic and understanding that everyone shows up a little differently. We don't need to make huge accommodations usually, but understanding what those are is the first step. Thanks for joining us, and don't forget to like and share with a friend, and let us know what else and what other important topics you'd like to hear about.